Mr. Comer said that he was not going to look into the letter or the doodle, the president's doodle. He's a decent doodler, by the way. So he wasn't going to look into whether the signature was a forgery, and I'm concerned about that. Because this is the President of the United States. If there are forgeries or forgers out there, I think we should investigate it. And in fact, this document is 22 years old. So you're telling me someone 22 years ago went back to the future and forged his signature when he was a Democrat. And somehow this person was forged his signature when he was a Democrat. And somehow this person was Nostradamus, knew he would become a Republican, become president 22 years later. So listen, I submit to you that we can solve this problem for the American people. You don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to take our dear personal friend, Mr. Comer's word for it. Let's bring in a signature expert. You guys pick the witnesses. Bring in your signature experts, swear them under oath, and let's have the signature examined. Is it his or it is not his? We don't have to play games or the president says it's not his, we say it's him. No, let's bring in a signature expert, a referee, because we can't agree on anything, even when it's right in our face, of whether that is indeed the president's signature, or if it's a forgery, we should immediately open up an investigation into this forgery. I think that's...
Will the gentleman yield for
I will have absolutely yield to my esteemed ranking member, Mr. Raskin.
Well, thank you, Mr. Moskowitz, for this point. I know that the President of the United States brought a $10 billion lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal for reporting about the existence of this. He denied that it existed in any way. What is the state of that litigation? I think, wouldn't we want that resolved before we move to a handwriting expert?
Oh, sure. I mean, I assume there will be obviously depositions that get taken. I assume there'll be production of documents. I assume as that case goes forward, they too will bring in their own expert to say it is not him. I just think, because we're in the middle of this investigation in oversight, even though, of course, this committee has jurisdiction over the DOJ and the FBI, but we all know that our chairman obviously only wants to handle, the real stuff. We give everything else to Comer. And so, I just think that rather than this drag out for weeks or months, is it his? Is it not his? Does he like to draw? Doesn't he like to draw? Right? Like, let's just get an expert in here to tell us if, and I'll tell you right now, if you bring in an expert, you pick the expert, you swear him out. If that expert tells us it's not his signature, I will accept the results. I will absolutely accept the results that it's not his signature and it is absolutely a forgery. But I'm willing to bet that we won't do that. I'm willing to bet we won't do that. But prove me wrong. I yield back.
The room fell silent as lawmakers stared at the image. A harmless sketch, yet everyone knew what it symbolized. It connected a sitting president, a billionaire financier, and a chain of events that had haunted American politics for years. One congressman finally broke the silence. He demanded a simple solution: bring in an expert, swear them under oath, and find out if the signature was genuine. At first people laughed. A doodle? Really? But the more he spoke, the more the laughter faded. He wasn't joking. He wanted proof. He wanted the truth. And that's where this story begins. What seemed like political theater turned into a forensic showdown, because if the signature was authentic, it linked a future president to one of the most controversial figures in modern history long before anyone was paying attention. But if it was fake, that meant someone had forged it 22 years ago, predicting the future like some kind of political prophet. Either way, it made no sense. In the hearing, the congressman, known for his blunt, quick-witted style, laid it out clearly: if it's fake, prove it. If it's real, admit it. But let's stop pretending we don't see what's right in front of us. His voice carried across the room. No insults, no grandstanding, just a call for verification. And that's what made it powerful. He reminded the chamber that the country deserves clarity. The note wasn't just a curiosity, it had become evidence. Evidence that could either expose a massive cover-up or confirm a decades-long misunderstanding. And that's when things got tense. Because somewhere between the laughter and the legal threats, the world learned that a massive defamation suit had already been filed. A $10 billion claim against one of the biggest newspapers in America for even mentioning the doodle's existence. The denial was absolute. According to the lawsuit, the note never existed, period. But that only raised more questions. If it didn't exist, why file such a monumental case? Why drag it into federal court? Why spend years and millions fighting something supposedly made up? It was like watching someone shout, "Ignore that rumor," while accidentally confirming it by overreacting. As the discussion unfolded, the congressman suggested something bold: cut through the noise, skip the politics, and test the signature scientifically. Bring in a handwriting expert, he said. Swear them in, let them analyze it, and tell the country once and for all whether this was written by the man everyone thinks it was. It sounded simple, objective, fair, but that's when the resistance started. Other lawmakers chimed in, shifting topics, mocking the idea, or suggesting it wasn't worth the time. Yet deep down, everyone in that room understood why this mattered. A signature isn't just ink on paper, it's identity, it's intent, it's evidence. And in the wrong hands, it's power. The congressman pressed on. He even offered a deal. You pick the expert, he said to his political opponents. Swear them in, analyze the signature, and if that expert says it's fake, I'll accept it. No arguments. But if they say it's real, then we have a very big problem. No one took the offer. He paused, smiled slightly, and said what everyone else was thinking: I'm willing to bet you won't do it. Prove me wrong. The camera caught several uneasy faces, because deep down, the question wasn't about a doodle, it was about what it represented. Proof, accountability, and the uncomfortable idea that maybe, just maybe, the truth was being buried under layers of political protection. And the timeline made it even stranger. The note dated back 22 years, long before the political world even knew what was coming. The congressman joked darkly, so what are we saying? That someone went back in time and forged a signature from a guy who wasn't even in politics yet? That they predicted his rise, his party switch, his presidency? The sarcasm hit hard. The absurdity was undeniable. But then the laughter stopped again, because when you strip away the humor, the logic still stands. If the signature's real, it connects two of the most controversial figures in modern American history long before their names ever made headlines together. And if it's fake, it means someone was forging powerful names decades in advance, waiting for the right moment to use them. Either possibility was shocking. Behind the scenes, the hearing staffers and analysts scrambled. Legal aides whispered about chain of custody rules, document preservation, and the need for independent verification. Because once a document enters congressional records, it's not just gossip, it's evidence. The congressman's call for a neutral handwriting expert wasn't a stunt, it was a challenge to the system, a demand that proof take priority over politics, that truth be measured, not declared. He reminded the committee that oversight isn't about performance, it's about accountability. When institutions lose credibility, democracy erodes. You can't demand trust if you refuse to verify facts. But here's what most viewers missed. This wasn't just a debate about a signature, it was a deeper message about how power protects itself, how investigations stall when truth threatens to embarrass the wrong people, and how easily evidence can be dismissed as irrelevant when it's politically inconvenient. That's why the clip spread so fast online, because it wasn't just funny, it was fearless. The moment he said, "Bring in an expert," the internet exploded. People started pulling old images, comparing handwriting samples, analyzing every curve of every letter. Amateur investigators, forensic analysts, even digital archivists started hunting for answers. It became more than politics, it became a digital manhunt for truth. And through all of it, one question kept echoing: if this is really nothing, why does everyone act like it's everything? Behind closed doors, reporters whispered about discovery deadlines in the lawsuit. Depositions could force sworn testimony. Subpoenas could drag private documents into public view. The stakes weren't just political, they were legal, financial, and historical. Because once that handwriting is verified by an independent expert, one side of the story collapses instantly. And that's the real fear. It's not the doodle, it's what comes next. The domino effect. The chain reaction of accountability. That's why some politicians treated the conversation like a joke. Laugh it off, call it absurd, shift the topic. Because acknowledging it means admitting the system might have overlooked something that's serious. It means the people in charge of oversight weren't overseeing much at all, but the congressman didn't let it go. He doubled down. If we can't even verify a signature, how can we claim to investigate anything bigger? That question hit like a hammer. Because that's the truth no one wants to face. If the government avoids the small verifiable facts, how can it ever handle the big ones? Corruption, trafficking, abuse of power, or cover-ups that span decades. This wasn't about one man or one note, it was about the system itself, about whether facts can survive partisanship, about whether truth can still cut through spin. The congressman's calm insistence for an expert represented something rare in Washington: objectivity. A reminder that facts don't belong to any party. Either the signature matches, or it doesn't. There's no in-between, and in a world where outrage is constant, that kind of clarity is terrifying to those who thrive on confusion. Think about it. 22 years ago someone signed, or didn't sign, a note. Today that single act could shift public perception, influence lawsuits, and reshape how we think about historical accountability. One stroke of a pen may end up defining how far back the truth really goes. What makes this story fascinating isn't just who's involved. It's the absurd yet profound simplicity of it. One mark on a page, holding the potential to rewrite reputations, legal cases, and maybe even history itself. But this story is also a warning. It shows how quickly facts get buried under noise, how truth becomes entertainment, and how easily citizens stop asking for evidence when emotions take over. That's why the congressman's line, "You pick the expert," felt revolutionary. Because it reminded everyone watching that truth doesn't need permission, it just needs proof. And yet despite that, the hearing moved on. No expert was called. No verification scheduled. The matter quietly slipped into the background, buried under the next round of headlines. But for those paying attention, the impact lingered. Because once the idea of verification is introduced, it doesn't go away. It plants a seed of doubt, of curiosity. People start to wonder what else hasn't been verified, what other evidence has been accepted without testing. That's how real accountability starts, not with shouting, but with questions that can't be unasked. And that's exactly what this hearing did. It forced the public to think differently, to realize that oversight isn't about partisan attacks, it's about protecting the integrity of facts themselves. If you strip away the politics, what's left is a simple lesson: evidence matters, expertise matters. And when someone in power says, "Don't look too closely," that's usually when you should start paying attention. Because in the end, this story isn't about a doodle or a lawsuit, it's about how easily the truth can hide in plain sight when people stop demanding verification. That small drawing, dismissed as nothing, turned into a mirror reflecting everything wrong with modern accountability. The refusal to verify, the fear of transparency, the idea that admitting uncertainty is somehow weakness. But maybe that's exactly why this moment resonated. Because it reminded people that truth still has power, even when it's inconvenient. So what happens next? Maybe nothing. Maybe the lawsuit drags on for years. Maybe the doodle fades back into the archives. Or maybe one day an expert actually gets called, the ink gets tested, and the truth finally comes out, clear, undeniable, and permanent. Until then, the question hangs in the air: was it real, or was it a forgery written decades before the world was ready to see it? And maybe that's the point. Maybe this entire moment was never about the answer, it was about forcing everyone to remember to ask. Because democracy doesn't survive on belief, it survives on verification. So the next time a headline flashes across your screen, or a politician waves a document claiming to hold the truth, remember this story. Don't just accept the version you're handed. Ask to see the evidence. Ask for the expert. Ask for the proof. That's how accountability works. That's how transparency survives. And that's how the truth, no matter how deeply buried, eventually finds its way to the surface. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and turn on notifications. Because in a world full of headlines and half-truths, we'll keep digging for the full story, one mystery at a time.